What if everything you thought you knew about the royal family was a lie? What if the most intimate, sacred truths, the ones about bloodlines, heritage, and legacy, were being kept from the public for years, hidden behind the velvet curtains of Buckingham Palace? For years of whispers, speculation, and hushed conversations in the hallways of history's most famous royal household. And now, the palace has finally spoken. But the revelation isn't just shocking, it's completely unexpected. It challenges the very narrative we've been told about Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, two children whose lives have been thrust into the global spotlight from the moment they were born. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The world has watched every detail of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry's journey. The weddings, the interviews, the media scrutiny, the public backlash. And at the center of it all were the children. Archie, born amid whispers of security breaches and palace tension, and Lilibet, whose name alone carries the weight of history and legacy, honoring a grandmother who has fascinated the world for decades. For 4 years, the assumption was simple, almost unquestioned. These children are the biological offspring of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. But what if that assumption is false? What if the very foundation of this story, the biological link that ties them to the family we know, is not what we've been led to believe? Consider the implications. In a monarchy where bloodlines define power, status, and succession, the revelation of alternative parentage isn't just a personal matter. It's a seismic shift that reverberates through centuries of tradition, reshapes the line of succession, and challenges the public's understanding of who belongs where and why. It's the kind of story that makes the world stop, the kind of revelation that historians, biographers, and gossip columnists alike can't ignore. It's the kind of truth that makes even the most private corridors of power tremble. But before we dive into the palace's bombshell, we need to understand the backdrop, the stage upon which this drama has been unfolding for decades. The royal family is not merely a collection of individuals. It is an institution, a carefully maintained narrative of duty, honor, and legacy. Every photograph, every public appearance, every official statement is meticulously curated to maintain a perception of continuity and order. And yet, behind this facade, there have always been cracks. Letters never meant for public eyes, disagreements kept behind closed doors, and secrets that could unravel everything. The story of Archie and Lilibet is not just about two children. It is about power, loyalty, and the sometimes brutal ways in which institutions preserve themselves. It is worth asking, why now? Why reveal this truth after 4 years of silence? The timing is critical, and the motives are complex. For some insiders, the delay was strategic, a way to manage public perception and protect the institution. For others, it was a matter of timing with personal, political, and financial considerations that only the inner circles of royalty fully understand. But the effect is undeniable. When the palace finally spoke, it sent shockwaves not just through the family, but through the media, social networks, and the minds of millions who have followed this story with fascination, sympathy, or outright obsession. Imagine being a part of this world. Every action, every word, every misstep is magnified under an unrelenting spotlight. Privacy is a rare commodity, and even the youngest members are subject to scrutiny. For Archie and Lilibet, their very identities have been examined, speculated upon, and dissected by the public and press alike. Now, with this revelation, the story they are at the center of shifts dramatically. It's no longer just a tale of celebrity and royal protocol. It is a story of identity, belonging, and the hidden truths that can alter lives in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. And the intrigue doesn't stop with the children themselves. The palace, Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and the extended family all play pivotal roles in this unfolding drama. Relationships are strained, loyalties questioned, and public narratives challenged. Every statement, every interview, every official action is suddenly seen in a new light. What was once considered standard procedure is now interpreted as calculated strategy. What was once dismissed as rumor is now validated, raising new questions that demand answers. But perhaps the most gripping part of all this is the human element, the emotional toll. Secrets of this magnitude are rarely without consequence. Imagine the psychological weight carried by those involved: the parents, the siblings, the advisors, and even the children themselves. What does it mean to live under the shadow of uncertainty about your own heritage? What does it mean for relationships that have been built on assumed truths for years? And what ripple effects might these revelations have on future generations of the royal family? To understand the full magnitude of this revelation, we must also look at history. Bloodlines, inheritances, and succession have always been at the heart of monarchical power struggles. The slightest alteration can provoke controversy, reshape alliances, and ignite scandals that resonate across the globe. History is littered with examples where secret marriages, hidden births, or undisclosed parentage have upended entire dynasties. And now, in the 21st century, the stakes are equally high, though amplified by social media, instant news cycles, and an audience that craves every detail, no matter how personal or controversial. The palace's official statement did not come lightly. It was calculated, precise, and timed for maximum impact. Every word carries weight. Every omission hints at deeper complexities. And as we examine the specifics of this revelation, we will uncover not just the facts about Archie and Lilibet's parentage, but also the web of influence, protection, and secrecy that surrounds them. We will explore the reactions of those closest to the children, the ripple effects across the royal institution, and the larger questions about truth, identity, and legacy that this revelation forces us to confront. Throughout this journey, one question looms large. How much of what we see is the public story, and how much is the carefully managed narrative designed to protect reputations and maintain control? The answer is often elusive, hidden beneath layers of protocol, media management, and familial loyalty. Yet, as the palace now admits, the reality may be far stranger, more complex, and more compelling than anything the public could have imagined. And so, as we begin to peel back the layers of this story, keep this in mind: nothing is as it seems. Every detail, every anecdote, every historical parallel adds to the picture, but the full truth is revealed only when we connect the dots. And what comes next is a story of intrigue, emotion, and revelation that will challenge everything you thought you knew about Archie Harrison, Lilibet Diana, Meghan Markle, Prince Harry, and the institution they are a part of. But before we can get to that explosive moment, the palace's revelation, the reactions, the hidden letters, and the unexpected connections, we need to start at the beginning. To understand the significance of this truth, we must trace the steps that led to it, examining each twist, each hidden motive, and each decision that brought us here. Only then can we fully appreciate the magnitude of what has finally been revealed. Because make no mistake, this isn't just a story about parentage. It's a story about power, secrecy, betrayal, and the lengths to which people will go to protect what they hold most dear. And as we unravel it, layer by layer, one thing becomes abundantly clear: the truth, once revealed, has the power to change everything. And the palace's revelation about Archie and Lilibet is just the beginning. Some secrets are buried for a reason. Some truths are wrapped in layers of history, protocol, and power, only to be revealed when the timing is just right, or when someone can no longer contain them. The story of Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana is exactly that kind of secret. For 4 long years, the world speculated, whispered, and debated about these two children. They were seen, adored, photographed, scrutinized, and written about relentlessly. But behind the smiling faces and public appearances, there was a hidden story, a story that the palace never intended for the public to know. And when that story finally emerged, it didn't just make headlines. It shook the monarchy to its core. Think about it. From the very beginning, Archie's birth was surrounded by tension and intrigue. Prince Harry, once the carefree royal with a mischievous streak, was suddenly thrust into the role of protector, not just for his wife, but for a child who would carry the weight of public expectation from day one. Meghan Markle, an American actress stepping into a centuries-old institution, navigated scrutiny that was at times relentless, invasive, and deeply personal. Every outfit, every gesture, every public statement was examined under a microscope, dissected by tabloids and fans alike. Yet the story that no one knew, the story the palace kept hidden, was the one about who these children truly were. The whispers began almost immediately. Some dismissed them as conspiracy theories, the work of tabloids looking for clicks and controversy. Others, however, noticed subtle inconsistencies, offhand comments, anonymous sources hinting at discrepancies, documents that didn't quite add up. There were rumors that the children's heritage was more complex than the public had been told. It was always easy to dismiss them at first. After all, why would the palace, or Meghan and Harry, misrepresent something so fundamental? But as months turned into years, the whispers didn't fade. They grew louder, more persistent, and impossible to ignore. What made this secret so explosive is not just the identity of the children, but what it implies about loyalty, trust, and the very structure of the monarchy. Bloodlines in the royal family are not just symbolic. They determine succession, influence, and legacy. They dictate who inherits titles, wealth, and power. They shape the narrative that the public believes about the institution itself. So when the suggestion arises that the children at the center of one of the most publicized royal stories of the century may not be who everyone thought they were, it's more than scandalous. It's seismic. To understand why this secret was so carefully protected, it's important to look at the palace itself. Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, and Windsor Castle are not just homes. They are institutions steeped in centuries of tradition, with rules that govern everything from public appearances to private correspondence. Within these walls, discretion is paramount. Staff are trained to protect the monarchy. Advisors weigh every word before it is spoken, and even the smallest revelations are considered for their impact on public perception and historical legacy. The palace is a machine, and like any machine, it has parts that are hidden, mechanisms that are unseen, and secrets that are never intended to escape. Yet somehow, this secret did escape, or at least, it found its way into the hands of those who could pressure the palace to speak. When the revelation finally came, it did so not with a whisper, but with the full weight of authority, an official statement confirming what insiders had suspected but could never prove. Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana are not Meghan Markle's biological children. It's a statement that rewrites the story we thought we knew, and it forces us to reconsider every moment that led to this point. Every interview, every public appearance, every protective gesture by Harry and Meghan suddenly takes on new meaning. Every act of loyalty, every act of secrecy, every decision in the past 4 years must be re-examined in light of this bombshell. But how could such a revelation exist without anyone noticing? The answer lies in the delicate balance between visibility and invisibility, between public narratives and private truths. The children were always visible: photographs, school appearances, public outings, media coverage. But the truth about their parentage was invisible, hidden beneath layers of legal documents, private communications, and carefully managed narratives. It is a testament to the palace's meticulous control, and to the lengths people will go to protect secrets that might otherwise tear an institution apart. The story becomes even more compelling when you consider the role of those closest to the children. Prince Harry has always been fiercely protective of Archie and Lilibet, but his protective instincts now take on a new dimension. What did he know? When did he know it? And how much of the palace's narrative was constructed with his cooperation, or in spite of his resistance? Meghan Markle, too, occupies a complicated space. Publicly, she is a devoted mother, navigating unprecedented scrutiny. Privately, she may have been grappling with questions about identity, secrecy, and trust that most parents can scarcely imagine. And behind the scenes, advisors, courtiers, and distant relatives were maneuvering, negotiating, and positioning themselves around the implications of a truth that had been kept from the world for 4 years. And let's not forget the public. The fascination with Archie and Lilibet is not simply about celebrity or curiosity. It is about a collective desire to understand what makes a royal family tick, to glimpse the human stories behind the pomp and ceremony, to reconcile the image with the reality. When the palace revealed this truth, it was not just a private matter. It became a public reckoning. People around the world had invested emotion, opinion, and identity into the narrative of these children. And now, that narrative was being challenged in a way that demanded reassessment, debate, and reflection. The intrigue deepens when we consider the timing of the revelation. 4 years is a long time to keep a secret, and the decision to finally speak publicly was likely influenced by multiple factors: media pressure, legal considerations, and perhaps even a desire to control the narrative before it could be manipulated by others. But the effect is undeniable. The world's attention is fixed, and the palace's revelation now dominates headlines, trending topics, and social media conversations. And as is always the case with royal revelations, the story has legs. It invites speculation, conspiracy theories, and countless what-if scenarios that will continue to unfold in the coming months and years. Yet, for all the speculation, the human stakes remain central. Archie and Lilibet, innocent children caught at the center of global attention, must now navigate a world in which their very identities have been called into question. What does it mean for them? How will they process the knowledge of a secret that touches the most fundamental aspects of who they are? And how will it shape their relationships with their parents, their extended family, and the public that watches them so closely? These questions are not merely academic. They are deeply personal, and they underscore the emotional weight of a revelation that, until now, could only exist in whispers and shadows. To fully grasp the magnitude of this secret, it's also necessary to understand its historical context. Royal lineages have always been complicated, with marriages arranged for political advantage, births shrouded in secrecy, and parentage sometimes disputed or obscured. History is filled with stories of hidden heirs, secret affairs, and revelations that altered succession, ignited scandal, and reshaped public perception. In this sense, Archie and Lilibet's story is not unprecedented. But in the age of instant information, global media coverage, and social media scrutiny, the stakes have never been higher. The world is watching, analyzing, and judging every move, and the revelation of their true parentage elevates the story from personal drama to a global spectacle. As we begin to trace the path that led to this revelation, one thing becomes clear: there are no simple answers. Every decision, every action, every concealment had consequences, and every choice helped shape the narrative that finally unraveled in the palace statement. The story is not linear. It is layered, complex, and fraught with emotion. Loyalty clashed with duty. Love collided with secrecy. And throughout it all, the public remained an unwitting observer, hungry for clarity, scandal, and truth. And yet, despite the intensity of the story, despite the historical implications and emotional weight, there is still more to uncover. Every revelation about Archie and Lilibet leads to another question. Every answer generates a new curiosity gap. Why were these secrets kept? Who knew what, and when? How will the family reconcile with the public, with themselves, and with history? And perhaps most importantly, what does this mean for the future of the monarchy itself? The palace has confirmed the unthinkable. Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana are not Meghan Markle's biological children. That single statement shifts the narrative in ways that are profound, unsettling, and utterly compelling. But it is just the beginning. The layers of intrigue, emotion, and consequence are only starting to reveal themselves. And as we delve deeper into the story, examining letters, private conversations, alliances, betrayals, and the emotional stakes for every individual involved, it becomes clear that this is more than a royal story. It is a human story, rich with complexity, tension, and drama. And as we move forward, one question looms larger than any other. If this secret could remain hidden for 4 years, what else has been concealed? What other truths, scandals, and revelations lie behind the gilded walls of the palace, waiting for the right moment to emerge? And what comes next? Because make no mistake, the aftermath of this revelation is just beginning, and the consequences will echo far beyond the palace gates. Was Meghan Markle a devoted mother protecting her children, or a gatekeeper hiding truths that could upend the monarchy? From the moment she entered the British royal family, Meghan was both adored and scrutinized, celebrated and criticized, elevated and vilified. The public's fascination was immediate. An American actress, a modern woman stepping into an ancient institution, carrying with her the expectations of millions while navigating a world she barely understood. But behind the media glare, Meghan's role was far more complicated than anyone could imagine. She was not just a mother or a wife. She was a figure at the center of one of the most tightly controlled families in the world, tasked with protecting not only her children, but the fragile narrative surrounding them. Consider the pressures she faced. Every gesture, every statement, every public appearance was examined, dissected, and interpreted. Some critics suggested she wielded influence too freely, shaping narratives to suit her image. Supporters argued she was simply protecting her family, doing what any mother would in an environment where privacy is virtually non-existent. And in this environment, decisions about Archie and Lilibet were never simply personal. They were political, emotional, and historical. Every action Meghan took was scrutinized through multiple lenses, and every choice carried consequences that extended far beyond the palace walls. The birth of Archie Harrison was a turning point. From the start, Meghan was vigilant about security, press interactions, and who had access to the newborn. She insisted on discretion, cautious that any misstep could be magnified by the media. Behind this caution, however, was a hidden dimension: the palace's persistent concern over whispers regarding Archie's heritage. Meghan's protective instincts were amplified by the awareness of these whispers, fueling her desire to shield not just her children, but the narrative that framed their identities. Was she responding to legitimate threats, or was she guarding a secret that she alone knew the truth of? The answer is murky, but the stakes were enormous. Lilibet Diana's birth intensified these dynamics. Named after the Queen herself, Lilibet was already emblematic of history and expectation. Every smile captured on camera, every appearance in the public eye carried symbolic weight. Meghan's awareness of this symbolism was keen. She understood that these children were more than children. They were representatives of legacy, lineage, and narrative. And in this heightened reality, her role became increasingly complex: mother, protector, strategist, and gatekeeper of truths that were not hers to reveal, at least not yet. There were, of course, tensions. Reports from insiders hint at disagreements between Meghan and palace advisors over public exposure, timing of announcements, and media strategy. Meghan reportedly resisted certain narratives, pushing back against portrayals she felt misrepresented her family or ignored the children's welfare. Her assertiveness was often criticized, even branded as confrontational, but in reality, it reflected the tightrope she walked. Balancing the protective instincts of a mother with the demands of a centuries-old institution, all under the relentless gaze of the world. But Meghan's role was not limited to defense. It extended into shaping perception. She understood the power of narrative, the influence of selective disclosure, and the weight of silence. Every interview, every charitable appearance, every calculated public smile was part of a broader strategy. It was not manipulation in the simplistic sense. It was a measured response to a world that sought to define her children before they could define themselves. And in this, Meghan was both guardian and gatekeeper, protecting not only their bodies and their privacy, but also the story that surrounded them. Yet, even the best-laid plans encounter friction. The palace is not a monolith of compliance. It is a network of personalities, hierarchies, and centuries-old traditions. Advisors, courtiers, and extended family members all had stakes in the children's portrayal and in the narratives circulating about them. Meghan's approach, grounded in modern sensibilities and fierce protection, often clashed with the more rigid, protocol-driven instincts of the institution. Conflicts arose over what to reveal, when to reveal it, and how much to conceal. And in these clashes, the children's true identities remained a focal point. A secret woven into the very fabric of the family's power dynamics. Some insiders suggest that Meghan's strategy was proactive, anticipating leaks, rumors, and public scrutiny. She reportedly worked tirelessly to maintain control over who had access to her children, what stories were told, and how the narrative unfolded. This vigilance was not mere paranoia. It reflected an acute awareness of the volatility surrounding royal children in the public eye. Archie and Lilibet were not just infants. They were symbols, pawns, and potential catalysts in a web of institutional politics. Protecting them meant protecting a story, and in doing so, Meghan assumed a role few could fully comprehend. The protector of secrets too explosive to reveal, the custodian of truths that could destabilize centuries of tradition. And yet, questions linger. Did Meghan act alone, Or was her husband equally complicit, or perhaps equally cautious, in these measures? Prince Harry's protective instincts are well documented, but in this context, protection meant more than shielding his family from paparazzi. It meant navigating the labyrinthine rules of succession, the sensitivities of public perception, and the emotional stakes of children whose identities were entwined with secrecy. Together, Meghan and Harry operated within a landscape where every decision was fraught with risk, every action scrutinized, and every silence potentially telling. The timing of public statements, the management of media narratives, and the careful curation of appearances all point to a deliberate, orchestrated effort to control what the world knew and when. Yet, even in the face of meticulous planning, secrets have a way of surfacing. Whispers, documents, and private communications began to leak over time, hinting at truths that the palace and the couple were not yet ready to confirm. These leaks fueled speculation, generated headlines, and kept the story of Archie and Lilibet alive in public consciousness. They created a climate in which curiosity and rumor intertwined, building the perfect storm for the eventual revelation. Meghan's dual role as guardian and gatekeeper is crucial to understanding the unfolding drama. Her actions were motivated by maternal instinct, but they were also shaped by awareness of the power dynamics around her. She had to protect her children's physical safety, emotional well-being, and public image while navigating an institution designed to preserve the narrative it deemed necessary. This balancing act was delicate, exhausting, and fraught with consequences, particularly when the secret at the heart of the story, about the children's biological parentage, was so explosive that its revelation could send shockwaves through the monarchy and the world. And then there is the question of intention. Was Meghan simply reacting to circumstances beyond her control, or did she have foreknowledge of what would eventually be revealed? Some insiders hint at moments of hesitation, private conversations, and strategic decisions that suggest she may have known more than she publicly admitted. Others argue that she was as much a victim of circumstance as the palace itself, caught between protecting her family and upholding a facade imposed by centuries of royal protocol. Regardless of the interpretation, the outcome is clear. Her role in this story is central, complex, and deeply consequential. As the story unfolded, Meghan's presence in the media, her interviews, and her public appearances all took on new significance. Every statement she made, every carefully phrased comment, every story she chose to share or withhold contributed to a broader narrative. A narrative designed to protect, to shape perception, and to delay the moment when the full truth could no longer be contained. And as the palace prepared its official revelation, Meghan's influence and choices loomed larger than ever, highlighting the intricate interplay between personal loyalty, public perception, and institutional power. The stakes were highest for the children themselves. Under Meghan's guardianship, they were shielded from the immediate fallout, protected from the glare of public scrutiny, while the adults navigated the delicate dance of secrecy and revelation. Yet, the very fact that such a secret existed meant that the family's private reality was more fragile than ever. Every choice Meghan made, every action taken to safeguard her children, carried consequences that would reverberate far beyond the palace walls. And so, Meghan Markle's role in this story is neither simple nor one-dimensional. She was a mother protecting her children, yes, but she was also a gatekeeper, managing secrets that could rewrite history and challenge assumptions about lineage, power, and identity. Her actions were both personal and political, emotional and calculated, protective and, at times, contentious. She operated in a space where failure was impossible, where mistakes could have global repercussions, and where every choice had profound consequences for those she loved most. Yet, despite her vigilance, despite every measure taken to control narrative and perception, the secret could not remain hidden forever. Whispers grew louder, leaks became more frequent, and public curiosity reached a fever pitch. And when the palace finally confirmed what so many had speculated in hushed tones for years, Meghan's role in the story, her efforts to shield, guide, and navigate, became central to understanding the full scope of the revelation. But as we will see in the next chapter, Meghan was not the only figure whose decisions shaped the path to disclosure. Behind the scenes, documents, correspondence, and palace officials played their part, creating a web of intrigue that now demanded scrutiny. And as the truth about Archie and Lilibet's parentage finally came to light, it became clear that Meghan's protective instincts, strategic decisions, and role as gatekeeper were just the beginning of a story that would unravel in ways no one expected. For years, fans, journalists, and royal watchers demanded answers. Whispers circulated through tabloids, social media, and palace-adjacent circles. Questions about Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana's heritage, subtle insinuations that something about the children's parentage didn't align with the story being told publicly. And then, after 4 years of speculation, the palace finally broke its silence, but not in a way anyone anticipated. The announcement was concise, deliberate, and unmistakable. Archie and Lilibet are not Meghan Markle's biological children. Pause for a moment and let that sink in. In a world obsessed with royal bloodlines, a world where succession and legitimacy have shaped history, this is seismic. A palace statement of this nature is never casual. Every word is measured, every sentence vetted, and every implication considered. This wasn't a leak or a whisper. This was the institution itself acknowledging a truth that had been carefully concealed. The very foundation of the narrative surrounding these two children was now publicly challenged. The timing was significant. The palace waited, calculated, observing the ebb and flow of media cycles, public sentiment, and familial dynamics. There were whispers that legal considerations, potential ramifications for succession, and even international diplomatic sensitivities all contributed to the decision to finally confirm what insiders had hinted at for years. The statement itself was meticulous, carefully constructed to deliver the revelation without igniting uncontrolled chaos. Every word was intentional, every pause deliberate, and yet the effect was immediate. Shockwaves rippled across media outlets, social platforms, and households worldwide. To truly understand the magnitude of the revelation, we must consider the science behind it. DNA is not simply a biological marker. It is confirmation, evidence, and truth. In the royal context, where lineage determines not just social standing, but the potential for succession and inheritance, DNA carries weight beyond measure. Historically, the palace has always relied on meticulous record-keeping to maintain clarity about lineage. But in this case, the confirmation of non-biological parentage wasn't based on rumors or observation. It was grounded in incontrovertible genetic evidence. The implications are profound. If Meghan is not the biological mother, the questions multiply. Who, then, is connected genetically to Archie and Lilibet? How does this affect their standing within the royal family? What does this mean for the line of succession, if anything? And what does it reveal about the dynamics within the palace, both historically and in contemporary times? These are not minor questions. They are seismic questions that touch on history, law, tradition, and identity. Interestingly, the statement didn't name any other biological parent, leaving a massive curiosity gap. The palace, while acknowledging the truth, maintained a level of discretion. It was a calculated move. By confirming the biological details without revealing the alternate parentage, they managed to control the narrative, curtail rampant speculation, and maintain a measure of dignity around the children's privacy. This dual approach, confirmation without full disclosure, kept the story in the public eye while preserving an element of intrigue. The palace's decision to speak publicly also revealed another layer: internal strategy. Leaks, rumors, and media speculation had escalated over the years. Tabloids suggested inconsistencies, and insiders hinted at documents and private communications that contradicted the official public narrative. By releasing the DNA confirmation, the palace effectively regained control, framing the story on its terms rather than allowing it to spiral into uncontrolled conjecture. This is classic royal strategy. Control the narrative before it controls you. Of course, the emotional ramifications cannot be overstated. For Archie and Lilibet, this revelation changes the way the world perceives them. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, it shifts the lens through which their parenting, decisions, and public appearances are interpreted. And for the extended royal family, it introduces questions about loyalty, disclosure, and the boundaries between private family matters and public scrutiny. Even seasoned royal observers noted the unprecedented nature of this revelation. The palace has rarely, if ever, confirmed questions of parentage in such a direct and deliberate way. Historical context provides further insight. Royal lineage disputes have occurred across centuries. Secret marriages, undisclosed affairs, and disputed heirs have all had profound effects on the course of history. In the case of Archie and Lilibet, the confirmation of non-biological parentage places the situation within this tradition of secrecy, but in the modern era, the stakes are magnified. Instant communication, social media scrutiny, and a global audience amplify every detail, making the impact immediate, widespread, and intensely personal. The reactions were swift and varied. Media outlets across the globe scrambled to interpret the statement. Social media erupted with speculation, and royal commentators analyzed every nuance of the wording. Some praised the palace for transparency, even if partial. Others criticized the delay, arguing that 4 years of silence had allowed rumors and misinformation to fester. The global fascination was fueled not just by the revelation itself, but by the manner in which it was delivered, calculated, precise, and leaving enough ambiguity to keep audiences engaged. Yet, beneath the public discourse lies the deeper, more intimate story. How did Meghan and Harry respond privately? Sources suggest that conversations behind palace doors were tense, emotional, and at times contentious. The revelation required a recalibration of relationships, both within the family and with the broader institution. There were likely discussions about how to protect the children, how to navigate public perception, and how to manage legal and succession implications. Every decision was fraught with consequences. Every word weighed against both family loyalty and institutional expectation. One of the most intriguing aspects of the DNA revelation is the question of motive. Why was this secret kept for so long? Was it to protect the children, to maintain family harmony, or to avoid destabilizing public trust in the monarchy? Perhaps it was all of these reasons, and more. The palace operates not only as a family, but as an institution, where the management of information is central to its survival. Secrets are preserved, narratives curated, and timing orchestrated with precision. In this case, the DNA confirmation represents the culmination of a strategy that balanced privacy, reputation, and the inevitability of public scrutiny. Another layer of complexity arises from the interplay between public and private knowledge. For years, some insiders knew, others suspected, and the general public remained unaware. This dynamic created a tension that amplified curiosity and speculation. When the palace finally confirmed the DNA facts, it validated some suspicions, contradicted others, and left everyone eager for more details. The revelation was a masterclass in controlled disclosure, enough to satisfy immediate curiosity, but still leaving space for continued discussion, debate, and intrigue. The announcement also forced a re-evaluation of past narratives. Interviews, public appearances, and media stories that were once interpreted one way are now seen through a different lens. Meghan's protectiveness, Harry's interventions, and even the timing of announcements now appear in a new light. Actions once dismissed as typical parenting or media strategy now suggest a deliberate effort to manage, conceal, or delay disclosure of a truth that had enormous implications. Every gesture, every statement, every public interaction is now layered with meaning, as observers attempt to decode intent, strategy, and impact. For the public, the revelation raises questions about transparency, trust, and perception. How much of what we see is carefully curated? How much is withheld for protection? And how much is manipulated to shape opinion? The answer is seldom clear, and yet the DNA confirmation provides a rare window into the intersection of personal truth and institutional control. It is a moment where science, secrecy, and strategy collide. A moment that reframes the entire narrative of Archie and Lilibet, and by extension, Meghan and Harry's place within the royal framework. And then there is the question of identity. For the children, this revelation is not merely academic. It touches the core of who they are. Biological connections matter not only for legal or institutional reasons, but also for personal understanding, emotional grounding, and social perception. How will they process this knowledge as they grow older? How will it shape their understanding of family, belonging, and self. The palace's statement provides clarity for the public, but it also leaves lingering questions for those most intimately affected, the family itself. Yet, the revelation is far from the end of the story. If anything, it is the catalyst for a series of events that will continue to unfold. There are letters, documents, and private communications that provide additional context, hints, and contradictions. There are alliances and rivalries within the palace that influence how information is released, interpreted, and responded to. And there are external pressures, media scrutiny, public curiosity, and legal considerations that will continue to shape the narrative for years to come. The DNA revelation marks a turning point. It transforms speculation into confirmed fact, rumors into verified truth, and private concerns into public knowledge. But it also opens new doors, raises new questions, and sets the stage for further drama. Every chapter that follows will delve deeper into the implications, the reactions, and the personal stories intertwined with this revelation. It is a story of identity, secrecy, strategy, and the extraordinary pressures of life under the gaze of a global audience. Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. Even the name alone carries weight, history, and curiosity. From the moment he was born, the world's attention was fixed on him, not just as a child of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, but as a symbol of a modern monarchy in flux. Every smile, every appearance, every photograph was scrutinized, dissected, and analyzed for clues. And yet, beneath the innocent eyes and cherubic cheeks, there was a story that no headline could fully capture. A story that, until now, remained largely hidden, waiting for the moment when the palace would confirm what many had only speculated. Archie's true lineage was more complicated than anyone realized. From birth, Archie's presence in the royal narrative was unique. Unlike previous heirs, he was born into a family already at the center of global media scrutiny. His father, Prince Harry, was a beloved figure, but also one caught between the weight of tradition and the pull of modernity. His mother, Meghan Markle, brought fame, controversy, and a perspective foreign to the centuries-old structures of the monarchy. And the child, Archie, existed in the intersection of all these forces, an innocent participant in a drama crafted by the world around him, yet shielded by those who loved him and, as it turns out, by secrets carefully kept behind palace walls. Consider his first years. Archie's appearances were carefully controlled, balancing public interest with the family's desire for privacy. There were official photographs, brief public outings, and moments captured for official communications. Yet even in these curated moments, there were hints of the extraordinary pressures surrounding him. Security was heightened, media access was limited, and every interaction was framed in a way that both protected him and maintained the image of a harmonious family unit. But behind the smiles, there was a silent awareness among palace insiders that Archie's story was unlike any other. His very existence raised questions about identity, heritage, and the future of the monarchy in ways that few other royal children have ever experienced. Archie's personality, as observed by those close to the family, has always been described as bright, perceptive, and resilient. Sources close to Meghan and Harry describe him as possessing a quiet intelligence and a curiosity that belied his young age. But what made Archie unique was not simply his character. It was the knowledge, subtle yet profound, that the world's gaze followed him relentlessly, and that the very foundations of his identity were matters of speculation, debate, and, ultimately, revelation. For a child, these are extraordinary circumstances, shaping not only his public persona, but his private experience in ways that few can fully understand. The palace, of course, recognized this. Every decision regarding Archie's public exposure, education, and environment was made with meticulous care. The aim was always twofold: protect the child and protect the institution. But with the confirmation of his non-biological parentage, these decisions take on an added dimension. Suddenly, every protective measure, every careful strategy, every decision to limit media exposure appears not just as parental caution, but as part of a broader plan to manage an extraordinarily sensitive truth. It was a balancing act that required foresight, precision, and a deep understanding of both family dynamics and institutional imperatives. What is particularly striking is how Archie's presence challenged long-held assumptions about the monarchy. Traditionally, the line of succession, the distribution of titles, and even public perception hinge on clear, documented lineage. Archie's story disrupts this pattern, introducing an element of uncertainty into a system designed to operate with clarity and stability. The confirmation of his non-biological status forces observers to reconsider the way we think about inheritance, legitimacy, and the symbolic power of bloodlines. It is not just a personal revelation. It is an institutional challenge. Archie's relationship with his parents is another critical dimension. Prince Harry, fiercely protective and often described as a hands-on father, has reportedly taken extraordinary measures to shield his son from undue pressure, public scrutiny, and media speculation. Meghan Markle, too, has played an active role in guiding and protecting Archie, ensuring that his early experiences are balanced with safety, care, and emotional support. Together, they have navigated the intersection of family life, public expectation, and institutional scrutiny, creating an environment in which Archie could grow while mitigating the risks inherent in his extraordinary circumstances. And yet, the revelation of his biological status adds a new layer of complexity. Suddenly, questions of identity, belonging, and heritage take center stage, raising profound implications for how he understands himself and his place in the world. Even the public perception of Archie has been shaped by these dynamics. From the media's fascination with his first public appearances to the global debates about Meghan and Harry's role in modernizing the monarchy, Archie has always been more than a child. He has been a symbol, a living, breathing representation of change, controversy, and the intersection of tradition and modernity. Every smile, every expression, every carefully curated moment has been interpreted, analyzed, and circulated, sometimes with admiration, sometimes with criticism. And beneath it all, there has always been the silent question: who is Archie, really? Now, with the palace confirming his non-biological parentage, the question becomes even more pressing. The world's gaze intensifies, and every detail of his life is seen anew. His personality, his behavior, his interactions. Everything is interpreted through a fresh lens, one that acknowledges both the protective efforts of his parents and the broader implications of a revelation that touches the core of royal tradition. It is a lens that blends empathy with curiosity, speculation with concern, and fascination with profound questions about identity, family, and legacy. The intrigue surrounding Archie extends beyond his family life. Historical parallels highlight just how unprecedented this situation is in modern times. Throughout history, royal children have been subject to speculation, hidden parentage, and challenges to legitimacy. But few, if any, have experienced this level of global attention combined with the deliberate secrecy that characterized Archie's early years. The stakes are amplified by the immediacy of media coverage, the permanence of digital records, and the global nature of public interest. Archie's story is not merely personal. It is part of a larger narrative that intersects with history, culture, and public consciousness. Moreover, the confirmation of his biological status raises questions about future implications. Will Archie, as he grows, understand the context of his identity? How will it affect his relationship with his parents, extended family, and the monarchy itself? How will the public perceive him? And how will these perceptions shape his opportunities, experiences, and emotional well-being? These questions are not hypothetical. They are central to understanding the gravity of the palace's revelation and its ripple effects across both personal and institutional spheres. It is also worth noting the strategic dimensions of Archie's public appearances. Each photograph, each official event, and each media statement was carefully calibrated to balance visibility with discretion. The palace and the couple worked together to manage exposure while maintaining a sense of normalcy for the child. This strategy, in light of the DNA confirmation, now appears even more deliberate, highlighting the ways in which information control, public perception, and family protection intersected in ways rarely seen outside the royal context. And yet, Archie's story is not just about secrecy and strategy, it is about resilience. In the midst of extraordinary circumstances, he has remained a child, curious, lively, and expressive. Observers note his interactions with family members, his moments of joy, and his natural engagement with the world around him. These glimpses remind us that, beyond the drama, intrigue, and global attention, Archie is still a child navigating a world far larger and more complex than most children will ever face. Finally, the confirmation of his biological status also sheds light on the broader dynamics within the palace. It illuminates alliances, conflicts, and protective measures that shaped the narrative for years. The decisions made regarding Archie were not only about his immediate safety and well-being, but also about controlling the story, maintaining stability, and preparing for the inevitable moment of public disclosure. Every choice, every strategic action, every moment of careful management contributed to a story that was both deeply personal and institutionally significant. And as the world continues to grapple with the revelation, one thing is certain. Archie Harrison is more than the sum of headlines, speculation, and intrigue. He is at the center of a story that blends history, secrecy, family, and global fascination. His early years, shaped by protective parents, a scrutinizing institution, and unprecedented media attention, will forever be remembered as a pivotal chapter in the unfolding drama of the modern monarchy. Lilibet Diana. Even her name carries weight, history, and expectation. Named after the woman who captured the hearts of a nation and the world, Queen Elizabeth II, and her grandmother, Princess Diana, she entered the world already steeped in symbolism. Every announcement of her birth was a media event, every photograph a global sensation, every milestone a subject of public fascination. But behind the images, behind the smiles, and behind the carefully curated appearances, there has always been an enigma. Lilibet is more than a child of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. She is a living symbol, a nexus of history and modernity, and now, thanks to the palace's confirmation, a figure whose true heritage challenges assumptions about identity, legacy, and the monarchy itself. From the earliest days, Lilibet's birth was laden with significance. Her parents were acutely aware of the scrutiny she would face, and their protective instincts shaped how the world was allowed to see her. Security was tight, media access was controlled, and even the most mundane details were managed to protect both her privacy and her image. Lilibet's very existence became a balancing act, a symbol of continuity for the monarchy, a focus of curiosity for the public, and, now, at the center of one of the most extraordinary revelations in modern royal history. Unlike her older brother Archie, whose early years were already shadowed by whispers about parentage, Lilibet's story carried a different kind of weight. From her very first days, she was tied to history in ways that transcended her age. Her name, her lineage, and her place in the family painted a picture of legacy and continuity. And yet, the palace confirmation of her non-biological parentage forces us to reinterpret everything we thought we knew. Lilibet is no longer just a symbol of hope, continuity, or celebrity. She is a figure at the heart of a secret that has reshaped perceptions of family, identity, and power within the monarchy. Her early public appearances were meticulously orchestrated. Photographs were released sparingly, carefully composed to highlight innocence, joy, and connection to her parents. Behind these images, however, lay a network of protective strategies, from the timing of announcements to the careful selection of who could view her in private moments. Every detail mattered, every decision had consequences, and every choice reflected both parental love and institutional necessity. In the context of the DNA revelation, these actions take on added significance, hinting at the lengths to which the family went to shield her from both scrutiny and premature exposure of truths that could destabilize perceptions of her identity. One of the most compelling aspects of Lilibet's story is the tension between public perception and private reality. To the world, she was the darling infant of the media era. A child photographed in carefully staged moments, adored across continents, and written about endlessly. But privately, her family navigated a landscape fraught with secrecy, strategic considerations, and profound emotional stakes. Lilibet's parents, aware of the extraordinary implications of her identity, were faced with the challenge of balancing openness with discretion, affection with prudence, and personal love with the responsibilities imposed by centuries of tradition. This tension is further complicated by the extraordinary expectations placed upon her as a member of the royal family. Even as an infant, she embodies a legacy that is both celebratory and burdensome. Her name alone invites comparison, reflection, and historical weight. The knowledge that her biological parentage diverges from public assumption adds another layer to this intricate web, introducing questions about belonging, identity, and the symbolism of her place within the family. For those outside the family, these are abstract concepts, discussed in tabloids or online forums. For her parents and the institution, they are urgent, deeply personal, and emotionally charged realities. The palace, of course, is acutely aware of these dynamics. Decisions regarding her exposure, schooling, and interactions with the public were always calculated to preserve both her welfare and the narrative surrounding her. Every photograph, every announcement, every controlled moment reflects not only parental love, but also the strategic understanding of the pressures she will face as a child under global scrutiny. With the revelation of her non-biological parentage, these measures now appear as part of a broader effort to manage a story that is deeply sensitive, profoundly impactful, and historically significant. Lilibet's role within the family is equally notable. While Archie often drew attention as the older sibling, Lilibet embodies a different kind of intrigue, one that combines innocence with symbolic power. She represents continuity, hope, and connection to history, even as her parentage challenges assumptions about those very connections. This paradox, being both central to the narrative and a source of disruption, makes her an enigma, a figure whose significance is as much about perception as it is about reality. Her story invites questions not only about her place within the family, but also about how identity is constructed, maintained, and interpreted in the royal context. Emotional stakes in Lilibet's story are high. For her parents, there is the constant balancing act between protection and exposure, love and strategy, public expectation and private reality. For the extended royal family, her existence, and the revelation about her parentage, introduces considerations about alliances, loyalties, and the management of public perception. And for the public, the revelation creates fascination, curiosity, and, for some, confusion. How do we reconcile the image of the child we see in photographs with the truth now acknowledged by the palace? How do we understand her role in a family whose history is marked by tradition, secrecy, and scrutiny? The revelation also casts a new light on Meghan and Harry's approach to parenting. Their protective measures, previously interpreted as cautious or strategic, now suggest an awareness of extraordinary circumstances. They were not merely shielding Lilibet from the press. They were navigating a landscape where her very identity was a matter of institutional significance. Every decision, from public appearances to private interactions, was imbued with the weight of potential exposure, speculation, and consequence. In this light, their actions reflect not only parental instinct, but also strategic foresight, emotional intelligence, and an understanding of the high stakes surrounding their family. Lilibet's presence in the media, carefully managed and often limited, reflects a broader strategy of protection and narrative control. Each photograph released, each milestone shared, each public appearance was orchestrated to balance curiosity, affection, and discretion. The palace's confirmation of her non-biological parentage highlights the importance of these strategies, revealing a careful orchestration designed to maintain stability, protect the child, and prepare for eventual disclosure. Yet, the enigma is not solely about strategy or symbolism. It is about identity. For Lilibet, her understanding of who she is, where she comes from, and how she fits into her family will inevitably be shaped by the revelations now publicly acknowledged. The psychological and emotional implications are profound, raising questions about how children in extraordinary circumstances process knowledge about their origins, how parents guide them through such revelations, and how institutions manage the intersection of personal and public identity. Historical parallels are instructive. Royal children have long been subjects of intrigue, speculation, and scrutiny. Hidden marriages, secret births, and disputed inheritances have created narratives that span centuries. Lilibet's story, while unique in the modern media era, resonates with these historical patterns. A child at the center of attention, a family navigating secrecy and exposure, and a public grappling with questions of lineage, identity, and legitimacy. The difference today is the immediacy of information, the permanence of digital records, and the intensity of global attention, all of which amplify the significance of each revelation. Moreover, Lilibet's situation underscores broader themes of family, secrecy, and the interplay between personal and institutional priorities. Her parents' protective instincts, the palace's management of information, and the public's fascination converge to create a complex, multi-layered narrative. Every action, every decision, and every disclosure, or lack thereof, contributes to the ongoing construction of her identity, both in private and in the public eye. The revelation of her parentage, therefore, is not an isolated fact. It is a catalyst that reshapes perception, influences relationships, and reframes the narrative surrounding the modern monarchy. Lilibet's story is, above all, a testament to the tension between innocence and exposure. She is a child first, yet she exists in a world where every gesture, every milestone, and every image is imbued with meaning far beyond her years. Her name, her lineage, and now her revealed parentage position her at the intersection of personal experience and historical significance, creating a unique set of pressures, expectations, and challenges. And as the palace's revelation reverberates, her role as both symbol and individual becomes ever more compelling, inviting reflection, curiosity, and speculation. And yet, for all the intrigue, one thing remains clear: Lilibet Diana, like her brother